So welcome, welcome, welcome to those who have stopped by. So my name is Nedelka Prescod, and I'm here with the wonderful, the beautiful, the brilliant Naledi Masilo from Joburg,
yes.
South Africa. I'm sitting here. Can I just shout out my mother and my nephew? Today is their birthday, so I'm sitting in my family kitchen.
Yay, happy birthday.
Yeah, and it's the day after Juneteenth. I'm still Juneteenthing. It's a verb now.
Yes, love it.
Naledi, what are we doing?
Yes, hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into our conversation. We're super excited to be here in community with women from across the African diaspora to just be talking about different aspects of our being, especially just reflecting on everything that's going on right now in the world. We're going to be talking about self-care. We're going to be talking about generational traumas. We're going to be talking about healing. And we're also going to be bringing in the art of storytelling into the space, because that is something that is very, central to the African being. So we thought it would be really nice for us to bring that element and begin having conversations in that way. So thank you so much to everyone that is joining us and everyone that is on our Facebook Live. We're super excited to have you here. Yeah, I don't know if Nedelka wants to speak a little bit on her project. So this is in collaboration. This is the Dreaming Girls Foundation together with the Unsilenced Voice Project. And I think Nedelka can talk a little bit about her project, and then I can talk about mine, and then we can introduce people in the conversation and continue. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Naledi. Yeah. So I've been working on a project called the Unsilenced Voice Project, and it addresses the need for women to be unsilenced and to deal with past traumas. A lot of us have been, oh, come on now, because I got mine right here. Wait for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a lot of the women that I know have been silenced through trauma. And a lot of times folks think that this is talking about like male-female relationships, but it's earlier than that. A lot of times it's the things that have happened to us in our childhoods. And so the process of silencing is one that we need to work on, especially in this time when I personally believe that there's an imbalance in the male-female voice in everything that we're doing. And I think there's a necessary balance. We need both. They're both beautiful, but we need both at the table. And I tend to think that a lot of the issues that we're experiencing right now is because there's a imbalance, that the women are silent. And so as much as we're seeing women speak out in politics, I am dedicating myself to being a change agent in that way, and work with women to connect with their voices. And sometimes that means through poetry, sometimes it means through songwriting, sometimes it means through voice lesson, and another huge one is through conversation. And so from that perspective, I'm sitting before you, the Unsilenced Voice Project. Naledi, your project.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing with us. So just to give some context on the relationship that I have with Nedelka, she's actually one of my teachers at school and is one of the most amazing, powerful Black women in this music space, and has taught me so much about the, American culture and American voice, and also just her history as a Panamean Afro-Latina woman.
Hey, say that again.
Yeah. So it's just been really, really inspiring to be in the space with women such as herself, and just following in the path that she's taking. I personally have my own project called the Dreaming Girls Foundation, which is a foundation that works with young women and girls in the arts and tries to find a bridge between like arts and social development, and really like giving them the tools and the networks and the resources to be able to responsibly engage in their communities and be able to make a real difference, that they feel that, I'm able to actually enact this from where I am with what I have and who I am. So it's really about giving girls a voice and really giving girls the opportunity to be able to use their minds and use their hands and know that they're able to make changes in their in their communities. So yeah, I'm super excited to be creating this safe space, to be creating this healing space, because it kind of came about with me and Nedelka feeling like, you know, we don't feel like we really have a voice right now. We don't really feel like we have spaces where we can heal, especially as women. And a lot of the time, like Nedelka was saying, through conversation, there's a lot that can come out of that. There's a lot of parts of ourselves that we can see in other people and that we can kind of see within ourselves being in a communal space. So yeah, I'm super excited. We're going to move into introducing our panelists, or our fellow women in the space. And something that I would really like is for each of us to introduce ourselves and our names, and kind of tell us a short story behind our names. Like, what does your name mean? So for me, my name is Naledi Masilo. Naledi is star. Tuto means education. Both of them are of Sesotho origin. And I got the names, the way that my family looks at names is that, you know, the name that you have is going to tell of your future, is going to tell of how you're going to live out your life. And for me, my family is very big on educating ourselves, and my mom loves education, and she's just like, my child will be a star of education, so that's what we're going to name her. And it's just, I love my name. I'm really proud about it. I'm really proud of the meaning behind it. And I'm so grateful that I was given this name that kind of presupposed my path in this world. So yeah, Naledi Masilo, that's my story. Nedelka can tell of hers and then introduce our next panelist.
Well, you know, that's interesting. Thank you for inviting me in this part of the conversation. I actually thought when I was a child that I would get a new name, because my name was this name that I did not hear, Nedelka. I still don't hear it often. And so my parents tell me that at some point I asked them, so, you know, what's going to be my grown-up name? Because surely it can't be Nedelka, and properly pronounced Nedelka. And so here I am. My name is Nedelka. And after doing some research, just to speak a little bit, in the culture that I come from, which is Afro-Panamanian, it's not uncommon to have someone with the name Elka. So there's Judelka, there's Vielka, there's Elka, and I'm Nedelka. But in terms of what my name actually means, my father was a classical musician. And at the time that he was studying at NYU, he was into a bunch of Russian composers. And so either my name would have been Natasha or Nedelka. And so him and my mother chose Nedelka, I think, because it kind of sounds more like it could be Panamanian. But I remember going to a couple of cleaners when I was living in Brooklyn. And it was a cleaners and a tailor. And I would walk in, they'd ask me my name, and I'd write it down. They go, oh, Nedelka. Oh, that name is from our culture. And so come to find out, my name, Nedelka, is Russian, and it means 7 days or week. And if some of you have seen my name, Wild Seed Sunday, the Sunday meant the 7th day. And so it was in alignment with that. And so that's what my name means, Nedelka. And so I'm going to invite, just, you know, alphabetical order, I'm going to invite Khalilah into first name alphabetical order to share, first of all, see her face, and to also share a story on her name.
Hello, Nedelka.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
So honored to be here and invited into this space. Completely agree that healing is so critical among Black women across the diaspora. So I'm so glad that I'm able to participate in this global event. So I'm Khalilah Marie, and my name is twofold. My first name is really generational, and it actually dates me, although I've actually had little girls named after me, which was a huge honor. Khalilah means best friend to God, and it's an Arabic name. I'm sure you all have heard Khalil. And so I grew up in Brooklyn, New York as well. And every time I would go into a corner store where there were Middle Eastern people or Arabic people, they would always stop me. Hi, how are you? Good to see you. And then sometimes it would be like, what is your name? And I say, Khalilah. And they go, oh, Khalilah, do you know what your name means? So I would just smile and let them tell me again. But it really felt good to feel connected to so many people. But in the era I was born, little Black girls were being named Khalilah, Latifa, Aliyah, Khadija. And the other well-known relatively connection to my name is Muhammad Ali's wife, first wife, Khalilah. And at that time, Muhammad Ali was the king of the world. My middle name, Marie,
still is.
Yes, yes, still is, will always be. My middle name, Marie, is after my tia. So I am Costa Rican, Afro-Latina as well. Costa Rican and Jamaican, mostly raised by my Costa Rican family. I was named after my aunt, Maria de los Angeles. And instead of putting that on my birth certificate, they just shortened it to Marie. So I'm Khalilah Marie, but it is intended to be Maria de los Angeles. And so that's a family name. You know, I think that's a name that also pervades the diaspora, whether it's people colonize in Great Britain, well, people colonize on the continent, people colonize in the Caribbean, and people colonize in America. That Marie name filters through, which is a very European from Saint Maria.
Love it. Love it.
Thank you. So I'm gonna also invite in Thuli Zulu. Let us see your beautiful face and hey. Tell us about your name.
Good evening, good day to you, because obviously I'm in South Africa. I'm so emotional by this whole name session. I literally just want to ululate and go,
come on.
Because there's something so powerful about, like, you know, in Zulu, and I'm Zulu, obviously my last name is Zulu. When we greet and say sawubona, it means I see you. So it's a very powerful greeting too. So I want to greet you in being here attentive and saying I see each and every one of you. And what profound names. I was like, oh, there's a huge pronouncement on a name. And yeah, I feel like I'm complete tonight. So my full name is actually Nokuthula, which means peace and mother of peace. It originates from the Zulu tribe, one of the long-standing tribes in Africa. And my last name also, so everything is quite indicative of, so I come from the Zulu lineage, from Shaka Zulu's lineage, and hence the warrior-like spirit in me. So my name is also quite juxtaposed because Nokuthula means peace. So I do believe I'm the justice warrior peace. I bring peace. And, you know, because people are like, oh my gosh, you're not quiet, Thuli. It's got double meanings. It means to have peace or to be quiet. And I said, yeah, I'm quite outspoken, but I have inner peace. And I know from, you know, because it is a pronouncement in my life, it's really helped me through my journey because I make every decision from a place of peace. Or if you don't bring me peace or a situation does not bring me peace, I know immediately that I'm living outside of the pronouncement of who I am. So quite honored to be here, ladies, and really just looking forward to exhaling and washing these dishes because I have a lot of dishes.
That's what it's about.
I love it.
Yeah.
And so I have this fascination. I just watched, I probably sound like one of those like ridiculous people who watch something and now they think they know the culture. Blood and Water. Wait, Naledi, help me.
You mean Blood and Water?
I love it. I can't wait for season 2.
Listen. And so once I watch, it's so good. And so once I watched that, I had this fascination with getting to South Africa, specifically coming into Cape Town. But the fact that you are on the phone with us and it is 8 o'clock there makes me feel like I'm just a little bit closer to South Africa. Like I'm getting there. It's almost there. So
yes, you are.
Amen.
And it's
Amen.
You're welcome. When you're in South Africa, ladies, please let us know.
Oh, you shouldn't have told me that.
100%.
You shouldn't have told me that. I'm about to meet it next week.
Your family.
Ashe.
Yeah.
So we're here. So you those of you who are witnessing this conversation, again, we thank you. And so you now know the 4 of us. and you will get to know us a little bit more in the conversation. But we want to start out with a tradition that I actually saw here in New York, the pouring of libations. And so we're going to do the drinking of libations. And so we're going to ask, who are you bringing to this conversation? And so, for example, I'll share this. So the name of the conversation is, can I help with the dishes? Which is something that I think all of us know what that is. Like, you cannot go to someone's house and sit down and have a meal and get up from the table and think you're gonna just walk away. You have to at least, first of all, bring a gift, but then you also at least have to ask, can I help with the dishes? And so where am I getting this from? This is me remembering my grandmother, who's now in the other realm. So I'm bringing Dita to the table, and I'm also bringing my mother, Shirley, to the table, who today, as I mentioned, is her birthday. And I guess we'll drink when we all share who we're bringing to the table. I'm gonna pass it to Naledi.
Yeah, thank you. I love this tradition because I feel like that's also very rooted in like our Blackness and our Africanness, where we know we're never in a space as an I, we're here as an us, whether it's me representing, like when I speak of being in the States, being in the US, people are like, you know, it's not just you, like you're representing our whole community, the people that raised you. So it's really beautiful to have the opportunity to bring people to the table. I bring my mother, Nontikele Lorajili, and I also bring all of like the young women that grew up around me and that I am growing with right now. It's so important that we have these spaces where we get to talk to people like us, people in our age group, people that have been through this journey, people that have similar interests. Just talking, for me, anytime I talk to older women, I'm just like, oh my gosh, can we be in this conversation forever? It's so beautiful that we get to have this space and I get to learn and hear from you. So that's who I'm bringing to this table. And my grandmother as well, Gloria Buhluya.
Khalilah.
Okay, so I am the granddaughter of Stephanie and Elena and the daughter of Gloria. And so I bring them with me as I mother Jordan, Jameson, and Kendall. I also pour libation from my Aunt Natalie, who was my mother's sister. She died when she was 42. She was my best friend for many years. And she left two daughters. Her youngest daughter, who I treat as my own daughter now, is going to start medical school in the fall, and she'll be the first medical doctor in our family.
Yeah. Okay. Thuli.
We're already crying.
Amen.
Oh
Amen.
gosh,
Amen.
you just had me there. For me, it would be such a disservice to name a few people. I come with my tribe. I come with the whole legion of Ondabezita, Umakeba, you know, we call them Ogeba, Ostuliskandaba. Those are all my clan names. So when I come here, I come with the whole of the Zulu nation, Zulu kingdom, and all my people. But in particular, I think my matriarchs are just like incredible women. So my grandmother, you know, Anna Zulu, and my late grandmother, we call her Mazon, but she is Beatrix Naza Lutush. And yeah, and those are the two I want to acknowledge, but I come with the whole tribe. I come with everyone.
Yeah. Can we lift up for that? Can we do a shared lift up?
Yes.
All right.
Cheers to that.
Ashe.
Yeah.
Cheers, ladies.
So,
yeah,
who's talking in your mind? And we want to keep the next two conversations at least a little bit light, because we will get deeper. But who's talking in your mind? Like, for instance, you know, if I'm in a certain situation, it depends. You know, it could be my grandmother talking in my mind. It could be my mother. It could be just the women of the village that I was raised in. So who's talking in your mind? anybody.
Yeah, I would definitely say another woman who helped to raise me is my tia Angela. She was the youngest of 9 siblings, and my father, both of his parents have 8 or 9 other siblings. So huge families. But my tia Angela, she was the youngest, and she helped to raise my father when he was still in Costa Rica, because my grandmother came to the States to find work to be able to bring her children to the US. And so she mothered him for quite some time. And then when she was here in the States, she not only mothered myself and my brother, my older brother, she kept foster children. And I have a whole lot of cousins who came through her home, other than my actual second cousins who were her children, had a whole lot of cousins who came through her home. And I think she planted the seed with me in terms of being an educator and doing what you can from your lane for justice. And so her lane was to give a home to children who might have been experiencing distress with their families. But, other than being a lawyer, I'm an educator first and foremost. And so that grounding of justice in many ways was formulated in my tia's house, knowing that all of these cousins came with so little, came with a garbage bag, came with just the clothes on their back, and how much I love spending summers with them, shooting skelly and playing double dutch and hopscotch, and chanting on the streets and coming in when the street lights came on. But she provided a safety in many ways for when my parents were trying to make $1 out of 15 cents, in the same way she did for my parent when he was back in Costa Rica and without his own mother.
Yeah, you just reminded me of something. Like I said, my grandmother and my mother, and of course there's my aunts and my godmothers, and I said the women in my village, but there's something when you started mentioning like the things that guide us, even in our decision making as adults in our careers. Like one of the things that, and I think about it right now in the social times that we're in, my grandmother would always say, like, if you ask her, she cooked chicken, or my mother cooked chicken, if you ask, because you had to ask, you couldn't just go and open up people's refrigerators and dishes and just take stuff. And so when I would ask, can I get a piece of chicken, she would say, let your conscience be a guide. And so
that's very detailed.
But it's very detailed, but it's also, when I think about it, literally there is that point where, like, if you actually sit down and talk to yourself a little bit, there is something that tells you don't take that extra step, or don't take that extra one, or don't say that thing, or be mindful of that person if you really let your conscience be a guide. And so this literally is something that runs in my head all the time, and I didn't realize it until now, because if I could just expand on this a second, I had taken with some friends when we were in our 20s, like this hypnosis class for the day. And one thing it said is that when we repeat something in our head consistently, at least 40 times, it goes into our subconscious. And that's the place from which we move. And so at this point at my age, it was so well ingrained into my mind that it's like a directive. You know what I mean? Naledi, I want to pass it to you, and you can evolve it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the whole concept of, let your conscience be your guide is definitely something very ingrained in, at least in my upbringing. My mother didn't have to say it. So the person who especially talks in my mind is my mother, because I just spent so much time with her. We were literally like, unless if I was either at school or at some other activity or with my mom. That was just me kind of growing up. So just in any space at any time, it's kind of like that voice is always playing in the back of my mind. And the concept of let your conscience be your guide, especially as I grew older, there were things that my mom didn't even have to tell me. I would know that if I ask her, she wouldn't even say anything. She'd just give me a look, and I know what the answer is. And that is like, let your conscience guide you. You can do it. I'm not gonna say you can't do it, but do it and you will see. So that's definitely for me something that has never left, and it's not even something that I ever really acknowledged until not even the first time I moved home, maybe like in the past 2 or so years, where I was just like, oh my gosh, like there's so many things I haven't been living at home for 6 years, and there's so many things I could have done and could have tried and places I could have gone. But in my mind, it was always just like my mom's voice at the back of my head, kind of like, I'm not going to say no, but do it and you will see. And when something happens, you will see what happens. And I'm not going to be the one that's going to clean it up for you. So it's definitely always speaking in my mind. Yeah. Sis Thuli, I don't know for you, like.
Yeah, I mean, we can't be Black and not be hearing our mother's voices ever. I think every Black woman hears his mom. And you also start emulating your mom, or you make decisions and you're like, that was Maureen speaking. That was not me speaking. So definitely a lot of voices. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm quite fortunate too, but I'm also quite an eclectic person. So I have amazing girlfriends who, and it depends with whatever scenario. So in my professional life, I'm able to tap into my peers, my mentors. So it really depends where I'm navigating. I'll hear different voices, but I mean, just make it like quite relaxed. My grandmother is such a timekeeper person. So anytime like I have to go somewhere or have an assignment, like tonight I was like, oh, I've got to get on here early. She'd be like, you need to be up. A girl doesn't sleep in late. Why are you up in the morning at 8 o'clock? I'm like, but I'm not going anywhere. We're on lockdown. No. You know, so that's been so entrenched in us that you just automatically wake up in the morning. And that's like my grandmother, just like, coming through. Just get up and be on time for everything. It's like this generation didn't get it. Yeah. People were okay, just, rocking up late. But I think it is the many women and men in my life. So, I'm fortunate to have great male friends. So, who have helped me throughout also my life and just understanding and navigating that part of my life, whether it's professional or relationships, it's good to just, sometimes I'll hear my guy friends saying, self-love. No, you're taking on too much now. No, you're going into savior mode. So it's good. I have those different voices.
Yeah. It's interesting because my, as you all talk about your mother's voice in your head, as I speak my own chat, I hear a lot. And it's not only through kind of sayings that she gave to me, it's also in the way she raised me. And this will connect to the story that I share later. But that concept of, and I think across the diaspora, this is common, right? Saturday morning, it's 8 o'clock and you're sleeping. Is there a problem, or do you not know what you're supposed to be doing? And I'll never forget when I got to college and she tried to call me early in the morning on a Saturday when I first got there. I was like, what?
Girl, you don't.
I cleaned up my dorm last night, but
I didn't.
Or I didn't because I'm grown at my little teenage self in college.
Right.
But, the other thing is, one thing that I know has pervaded because of how I was raised is this statement she would always say: 2 grown women can't live in one house. Woo! So. While I will always be a safety net for my children, I definitely raised them to never return home.
Yeah.
Can they return home? 100%. But I'm raising you to never return home. Be self-sufficient. Because if you're in my home, my rules will pervade. But in your own home, you can live the life you want to live, and I can place no judgment on it, is how I receive that. So throughout their lives, that is a constant thing that I've heard in my head. 2 grown women can't live in one home. Therefore, Khalilah, what are you doing to prepare them to be able to make their own home?
It's funny because I was thinking of what Naledi was saying about, like, you're hearing your mother, there's certain things you won't do. And I know that you're in your 20s, and I'm here to tell you, I'm not in my 20s, and it's still happening. And even the fact that this is a Saturday morning and I woke up in my mother's house, guess what the conversation was? So these are real things. These are definitely real things.
I was kind of triggered by, not triggered in a bad way, but triggered to a conversation we had when Thuli brought up, the whole thing about you're a girl, you're not going to wake up at 8 a.m. or you're not going to wake up past 8 a.m. even on a Saturday. I think I spoke about this with Nedelka as well. This is a common experience we have in our diaspora. And the first time I really interacted with it was when I first moved to college. I had a roommate who was a white girl from Cape Town, from around Cape Town. And I would wake up like early, even on weekends, and kind of be like stressed out that like, there's probably stuff I'm supposed to, my mom's about to come in and be like, Naledi, I've been up, I'm cooking, it's Sunday, it's this, it's this, it's this. And she was like, I'm just so confused why you're waking up early on a Saturday morning. And I was like, I mean, is this not a normal thing? Like,
right.
Just even if there's nothing to do, you make your bed and you lie back on your made up bed. Like you can't just be like lazing around.
Right.
When I was in school about that, but me and my roommate had a conversation about it, and she was like, the whole concept of, you have to wake up because you're a girl and you need to do this and this, and it was something very like unfamiliar to her, something very alien. And I was like, wow, so really, like, as Black people, we all got raised by the same mother, and then there's like a whole other world that we didn't really experience.
But haven't we been raised by the same mother, in fact?
I really feel like we have. Honestly, like, sometimes I have conversations and people will tell me like, oh, my mom used to do this thing. And I'm like, why does that sound exactly the same as my childhood? What do you mean?
No, you're right. And I mean, Naledi, you'd be able to relate to this. Back home in South Africa, and I'm sure with you too, the mother voice lives beyond your bloodline, right? Your family.
That's
like your
right.
Immediate family.
That's right.
So the auntie from next door is my mom. So she would call me out or call you out if she sees you somewhere doing something wrong, right? So things have changed and times have changed, but you knew that you can't be acting up in public because the elders see you.
That's right.
Your mom see you, or a woman who doesn't even know you will
That's
be like,
right.
why is this kid, not particularly me, but I've seen older women call out people, like stand up for the adults in a bus, when we're growing up. So it's so true because our mothers just live in every woman. They multiply.
It's interesting. I was raised that way.
Right.
And no matter where, you can cut up, but by the time you got home, my middle school that I went to, Philippa Schuyler, the assistant.
I'm sorry, what school did you go to?
Philippa Schuyler Middle School for the Gifted and Talented in Brooklyn. But, the assistant principal grew up with my tia in Costa Rica. So if anything happened at school, Tia Angela would be like, I heard that you were speaking a bit much in class.
A bit much.
And it would be like, hey, I can't do anything. But beyond that, I live in Baltimore now, and I am an educator deep within my soul. And it's so interesting because, I've lived in places in the city where there might be young men walking through, pants sagging, cursing each other out. And I'll step right in like, don't you live around the corner?
Yeah.
I'll just come knock on your door. If you
as you should.
And they would be like, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. And then after that, they would see me and be like, hey, how you doing? Because for them, what I gave them was someone else cares about me. And is watching me. Other people may judge me as some thug or I'm about to cause trouble, but Black children are Black children to me. I don't care what you look like. I will hem you up on the train.
Period.
Because I don't care what anybody else does. I'm going to talk with you. Every moment is an educational moment. So it always baffles me when people are like, these kids, and they, clutch their bag. I'm like, that's a 14-year-old, and I'm going to holler at them. So, okay.
But this is why we feel a lot of what we feel in the community where it's coming across like Lord of the Flies, right? When the children were running their own situations, they having their own way. I don't come from that. My parents came with a group of people that created about 25 to 30 families from Panama in the 60s to the United States. And from that, I come from a tribe, a village of God brothers and God sisters, where whoever's house, first of all, we partied together. We went to church together. Our parents partied together, went to church together. And so the standard was the same across the board. On top of the fact that we were raised that even if the adult was wrong, and I want to nuance this because sometimes we as adults are wrong, but what you will have is respect.
Yeah.
So when you're in the street and someone is talking to you, there's a certain way you carry yourself. There's a certain way you respond. And so like you, Khalilah, I remember coming home from school on the A train and we were wild as heck because I went to an arts high school. And by the time I got home, my mother was like, oh, you're on the A train acting crazy. By the time I got home, she had already gotten the wire. And this was a consistent thing. And you don't get upset like who told her. It's just a thing.
Yeah. She'll beat you for just saying this person said this. She'll be like, for that, do you have a bit of lip?
Yeah.
Because auntie, if I'm gonna give you a smack.
You embarrass me.
First of all, the look. Can we acknowledge the look? Who was it that brought up? Was it Naledi with the look? First of all, let's talk about the look.
If you say anything, you already know that by that look, you're in trouble. There's something that is going to happen. And
but do you ladies feel like there's a shift? Obviously, we're living in different times.
Yeah.
And people will be like, who are you?
I think it depends. I think there has been, there's been a kind of an era where, and I don't want to chastise millennials because it's not true for all of them, and definitely in many ways not true for Black millennials. They, their life is a different experience than white people and other non-Black people. But there was an era where it was like children are people and they're just little adults, and have conversation with them and just explain everything and give them
everything.
Give them a certificate for just showing up and a trophy because they spell their name right. And I'm like,
no, that's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do.
You got a 70, you're not getting a gold star too. But
I think there's definitely a balance that can be learned between that, because now you find that, for a lot of people who kind of went through that very hard knock style of being raised, you get much older and you find yourself with like all of these traumas that you don't really know where they come from. Some of them actually do come from the relationships that you had with your parents. So I think there is a balance that needs to kind of be found and spoken about, especially within the Black community, because I know, like, I was raised amongst like white peers, like most of the people I went to school with, and especially when I was like in my like formative years between like 6 and like 12, seeing how some of my peers interacted with their parents, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so different. Like if I even raised my voice a little decibel above a certain amount towards my mom, like it would be done. But I would see that as like a norm in that community. And I think, obviously there's like different cultures that people have, but also like for me, that was like, those are some things that I will not tolerate from my children, and that I'm happy that my mom doesn't tolerate that from me, because what am I, a 9-year-old, shouting at my mother and like, giving her lip and stuff like that. But I also saw in that culture, there was a sense of like, you are a human being, like your respect goes both ways. There was kind of bringing me into the decision-making process. I think that's something that is still important. So I think it's all about balance. It's definitely not the balance.
Yeah. Can we just acknowledge that the millennial just told us that? This is already the shift this is already the shift in it. But it's a real thing. Say it again, Thuli, say it again.
I think you're very conscious. She's like from another world.
Yeah.
Like you're mature beyond your years.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody were like, she's the model everywhere. When I talk to my little cousins, I'm like, meet Naledi.
It's happening here in the United States with her too. I'm so, and
I mean, like you're saying, in Nedelka, it's being just conscientized and just like being conscious of where we are, because the mother archetype will play out. It will always play out.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to play out because they, we need to have a sense of accountability. Sorry for the justice, narrative. It's good. I think people do have the freedom of speech. And that's the thing. Too much freedom of all these other things also lead, young people to cross the line and not have those set boundaries. So it is important that there's an exchange and there's an understanding of negotiating terms. But there are things you just don't negotiate with children. From where I come from.
Yeah.
We could stay right here in this conversation. So I feel like we need to pin this and definitely come back to a part 2 just on that dynamic of balancing what we see as respect with personal respect, your ability to advocate on behalf of yourself. But we do have some other things to talk about. We're actually going to open it up into storytelling. And we're going to start with Dr. Khalilah.
Yeah. So what's going to happen is that each of us are going to take 5 to 10 minutes to share a story, whatever we think is relevant to our lives, whatever we've heard, in whatever way that we're willing to share it. I'm going to ask all the panelists to turn off their cameras, except the person who's going to be telling a story. And from everyone in the comment section, people who've just joined us on Facebook, who've just joined the webinar, thank you so much for being here. Please feel free in the chat to tell us about your names, to tell us about what voices have been playing in your heads. We'd love to read that, and we'd love to acknowledge your presence in the space with us. So yeah, we'll open up the space to Dr. Khalilah.
Hey.
Thank you, Naledi, and thank you, Nettie. Okay, so I mentioned before the voice in my head from my mother of 2 grown women can't live in one home. I went to college when I was 16 years old, which is not typical. And I have brothers, and my older brother and I were the 2 children of my parents. Each of my parents, after the divorce, had another son. When I was growing up, I constantly felt the pressure and expectation and weight of handling things at home that my brother was not expected to. Do the dishes, Khalilah. Can you cook, Khalilah? Can you bring me something to drink, Khalilah? Help your brother, Khalilah. It shifted to, this is my older brother. Help your brother, Khalilah. As I got older. And then with the 2 grown women can't live in one home, as I was in college and moving into law school, my mom and my grandmother would be like, have you spoken to your brother? Or I just talked to your brother. I helped him out in this way. I helped him out in this way. And this is my single older brother, super intelligent. They kept asking me, have you talked to your brother? Your brother says that you were mean to him. Your brother says that, he doesn't want to talk to you. And then my brother would start saying things like, well, the whole family helps you. The whole family helps you. They helped you pay for college. They helped you get a car. They helped with your wedding. And then finally I got to a breaking point because none of that was true. No one paid for me to go to college. I paid for my first car. I paid for my wedding. I did get a little help from my parents, but for the most part, they didn't pay for my wedding. They didn't help me with a down payment on my first home. And there was a moment of deep frustration where I was hearing about helping my brother. And I asked my mom, why do I always have to help him? Shouldn't he be helping me? He is older than I am. And she stopped. And she said to me, I know my children. Your brother needs help and you don't. So I'm always going to give him that help. But since you were a child, I've always known you would take care of yourself. And so there's a saying in Black culture across the diaspora, raise your daughters, love your sons. And it remains something that I continue to grapple with, because aren't we deserving of that loving hand as well? And I'm so very conscious of the fact that I don't have sons, but I'm doing a lot of raising of my daughters. And as my oldest daughter is preparing to go to college next year, I really have been trying to be conscious about how I love my daughters and not just raise them. And this dynamic of raise your daughters and love your sons in many ways has contributed to the imbalance that we see in our communities of protecting the Black man and expecting the Black woman to survive. So I offer that from my heart. I know my mother loves me. I know my brother was confused because I was getting things done, and it was his perception that somebody must have been helping me, possibly because he needed the help, or he asked for the help. I don't know how much he needed the help. But something for us to think about as we raise our own children, and we raise our nieces, nephews, godchildren, children we care for in the community, that they all need love and they all need to be raised. That balance is important so that we aren't perpetuating generational traumas that require women to figure things out and get things done, but allows for men to expect deep empathy, even in ways when they take away from our community. That's it. The end.
Thank you, Sissy.
That was really touching. I was reading some of the Facebook comments, and Stephanie Munoz responded, and she's like, you know, this is something that I've heard, like the words that you're saying feel so familiar to me. And I know I had this conversation with my mother a while back, who's also she's a middle child, and she was like, you know, this was with her as well. She felt very, very much like her parents were always like expecting of her to do stuff and do this, and were like very much loving of her like younger siblings, or her older brother, or her younger brother and her younger sister. And I think it's a very important conversation that people have, especially like within our community, where women are especially taught to like do stuff. Like we're always raised, as you put it, like we're taught to do, Naledi, you have to learn how to clean, you have to learn how to cook, you have to learn how to do this. You can't be a girl that's sleeping late. You can't be a girl that doesn't know how to do all of this stuff. And it's kind of like, what are these like double standards?
Yeah.
And also like, what does it mean for you to be putting all this pressure on me to be a human being? Because a lot of parents also do say, it's because I knew that you could do stuff. Like I knew that your brother, your brother was a little bit slow. Your brother was a little bit slow. And painful trauma that you carry for, like I was, when my mom first brought it up with me, I was maybe in high school, and I laughed at it. I was like, dude, you're so old. Why are you still like thinking about this stuff? It's not that deep or whatever. But thinking about it more and growing and understanding that journey more, it's really, really,
it's something that
touching. Thank you for sharing that,
the way it has stuck with me is, people look at my resume and they feel like I'm very high achieving. Sometimes I have to push back and say, I feel like I could have been doing so much more, because I am constantly fighting against this trauma of not having anyone to help me. If only somebody would just take care of me, I could be my full self. And they're like, what are you talking about? You've done this, you're awesome. And I'm like, no.
You know, one of the things that one of the things that I feel like we need to deal with as people, but definitely as women and definitely as Black women, is that just because I could take it doesn't mean I should. And so even this morning, you know, I was joking about my mother, you know, I was having that Saturday morning cleanup thing. And, you know, you guys, I don't know, Thuli, if you knew this, but my dad passed in August, and you know, there's a whole beautiful, strong story that goes with it. But like, even to this day, it's my mother's birthday, and she still has that thing where she needs to get up at now. Today she's 81 to clean her house with the same vigor and the same rigor that she's always done. And she's like, but I can't, you know, like I have to do this. And I'm just like, you don't. Like,
Yeah.
like self-care first, and then, you know, let's manage how we, you know, tend to our house, but we have to put on our face mask first. I do want to touch back really quickly on Stephanie Munoz, and Farai's there. Hey, Farai, and everyone that's in here that I see and love. But Stephanie Munoz is from Mexico, and when she was a teenager, her mother passed, and she talks about this freely. So I don't feel like I'm overstepping by speaking her story. When her mother passed, and maybe a week later, her father was arrested. And so here you have this sister who, since that time, because she's now a grown woman teaching in New England Conservatory, who went to New England Conservatory, teaching in Boston, who's gotten herself thus far while also taking care of her two brothers. And she's been doing that since she's a teenager, moving from Mexico, with the American pronunciation of it, into the New England area. And she's still having to hustle like that. But mind you, she's a force. She's fierce, and it brings that up in us. And something I would like to explore, and this is not specifically talking about anyone in general, but those of us who have had to have such a strong experience that brings out the strength in us, you know, it makes it also interesting when we want to partner with men who have a more traditional mindset of how a woman should carry herself and the things she should do, or how quiet should she be, or how loud should she be. You know, it affects all those things, and I'm not going to talk about it now because we're going to spend about 2 days on that subject. Any other thoughts on this conversation about raising your daughters and loving your sons? Yeah.
Khalilah, you just have me tonight, eh? Like everything that's come out of your mouth. And I think it is the power being deferred. You know, there are these subconscious biases that we carry with us. And that's why, like, you're constantly trying to pick all the stuff because that's what you grew up with, right? I mean, recently I just put up a post on Instagram, and it was quite interesting. It's a quote I found. It said, imperfection is a form of freedom.
Yeah.
Because there is a standard that is set and everyone has paved the way for us, we also put ourselves under that subconscious pressure to be able to live up to that. But we also feel very neglected. So there is a dichotomy, because you're like, everyone expects you to be the leader, the academic, the one who pulls it together. I also want a while out. I had an incident about 3 weeks ago, and I find myself constantly being mediator in all the different spaces. I said, I also want to have a moment of just, you know, losing it for like 5 minutes. Am I allowed that? And I feel Black women are not given that space to be able to well out. Before lockdown, and I had a meeting. We'd had the meeting, and then we went downstairs, and there was a bar. And we saw all these white women. Then we saw a pregnant white woman at the bar, and we said, oh my gosh, that would never happen with a Black woman. You could never be highly pregnant and then quickly go meet up with your friends at a bar, because the perception would be like, why? She's pregnant, she's supposed to be home taking care of her
She's supposed
family,
to. She's supposed to.
Exactly. So it's those pieces that we have more pressure, even as Black women, because we're carrying our brothers, we're carrying our moms, we're carrying our friends, we're carrying, you know, the space that we live in. So I totally resonate with that, because where do we find the space to be able to act different? So there is there's the shame, there's the guilt. When you are in a space where you're hemorrhaging your energies and you like quickly snap out of it. So we could never be victims, but we just want to be vulnerable and cry for a week. Like I just want to pick up my phone, right? To the whole world. I just don't want to engage with work, and give me that space.
Yeah. And the one thing I'm realizing is that we have to take it. You know, like when people say take your time, like you literally have to take your time because the space will not be provided. And again, and not feel bad about it, to be unapologetic about it.
Yeah.
I need the light. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that kind of brings us to our next topic. A few
Yeah.
weeks ago, I was watching a video where they were talking, the names are escaping me right now, but two women were talking about, the Black Lives Matter movement and institutional racism, etc., etc. And it was a white lady as well as a black lady. And she was talking about how, the values of a society and just the values of people tends to come through the maternal line, tends to come through like what your mothers teach and what their mothers taught them and what their mothers taught them. And I think something I've also been thinking a lot about is like a lot of these guilts that we have, a lot of these thoughts that we have, like, being in, when you walked into that bar and you saw this heavily pregnant woman. I think another thing that plays in your mind is like your mom's voice is also still in your mind, or your grandmother's voice of how Msadi Ona, how this woman, how can she be in this space, like, acting this type of way? And you tend to take a lot of those things on. And I'm curious to know if there's, things that you believe like in your spaces that kind of came through the maternal line, and like what challenges those brought to you, like when interacting with the world that you exist in today. Because also a difficulty is like you exist amongst like your black community, or like Nedelka was saying that she had all these people come from Panama and that was her community. They partied together, they went to school together, they did all of these things together. But now we exist in these spaces where we're interacting with different groups of people who have different sets of values and different sets of understandings and perspectives of the world. So like, what are some of those challenges that those values that you had learned that have come through that line? What are some of the challenges? I guess that's the base of it.
I'll jump in here and say, when I went to college, and I think even still today, because Baltimore is relatively homogenous. When you grow up in Brooklyn, especially East Flatbush, everybody is from somewhere, right? The white people were not white people that I grew up with. I grew up with Jewish people, Polish people, Russians, Italians, Irish, but it wasn't like, oh, the white guy said. It was like, the Greek kid that's hangs out on the second floor, which one, said blah, blah, blah. But the same in the Black community. While we may not have been from the same island or from the same country, when we speak about being raised the same, we all were being raised the same for the most part. Our dishes might have been different. It's like the fufu battle or the jollof battle, that you hear about. It's still jollof, right? That's still a part of your family. And here, I definitely have felt the tension of Black American culture. And it's very interesting because I was born in America, but I was not raised among Black Americans. And unlike other people who may be first generation citizens, who may come to a place in America with their family may have come to a particular place where they're the only Nigerian, they're the only Panamanian, only Jamaican, they're the only Mexican, that, whatever, Chicano, whatever they are. And there's been tension of, you guys don't bring something to people's house when you, and I don't mean the cookout, but someone invites you to a soiree at their home. You don't bring a wine, you don't bring a little something, okay. And that concept of, can I help you with the dishes, does not pervade necessarily in all American culture. But there are other things that they have that are similar that we do. Like, you don't walk in the house and not speak. I don't know who raised you, if you were raised in the woods or in the jungle, but you don't walk in nobody's house and not speak. I don't care who you are. You better turn it around and go back out. Balance of things that are different, that I have to catch myself on judging people.
Yeah.
And there are things that are similar that remind me, oh, these are still my relatives through my ancestors. And so those kinds of, even the ways that I speak, right? I think if people are watching this who know me from other parts of life, and I want to say, hey to all you guys in the Facebook comments, I see you, I appreciate you, love y'all. my voice changes when I'm speaking to people who are from other places.
Yeah.
And when I'm speaking to New Yorkers. And people will hear me and be like, I didn't realize you had an accent. And I'm like, I speak like this all the time. And they're like, oh, you don't. But when you the safety of a community that's familiar, recognize that I quickly let my guard down. Even though I was raised in a place where guard used to always be up. But it's like, you're my people. We know the same rules of the road.
Right.
And so I'm more comfortable with you. But here in Baltimore, there are just so many different rules in terms of how you move through the streets, how you interact with people. So I've experienced.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
I was thinking about what you said. Naledi, go ahead. It's a little
you can continue, Nedelka.
I was thinking about what Khalilah was saying about like judging. There's a, class is a thing, right? So even if we're not dealing with classism politically and social climates within the Black community, class is a thing. Like knowing when you come into the house and you speak to the elders. Again, I will say another taboo is you don't go into somebody's refrigerator. Like you're never that comfortable.
Yeah.
And so these things, like in terms of what I learned from my mother, it's just like these little, very subtle, specific things that I have to watch myself, because in my mind, this is the way it should be. And I agree with them. I teach it to my son, I teach it to my nephews, but that it doesn't make it the universal law. And so I do have to watch on myself sometimes when I'm in different spaces to not kind of like,
it's
I have
fun.
this.
My partner thought I flipped out, thought I was crazy, because the first time that I cooked for him, he comes right back to the kitchen and opens the cabinet where the seasoning is, right? I was like, what?
Excuse me?
I need to ask seasoning.
I'm glitching. Like,
what? I was so pissed. And I wilded out a little bit. Like, that is so insulting. Someone gives you food and makes food for you and you get up. He was like, what's the big deal? I want a little extra. I'm like, seasoning? You touching my Larry salt? You touching lemon pepper? What? And I lie to you not. He says, I thought you were a little crazy that night.
Yeah, I am. It's okay if you think that way.
You eat the food and tell me afterwards you would like a little more. But he thought I was nuts.
No, wait. First of all, I do need you to think I have some crazy on me. Like that's fine.
Remember that. Keep that in your memory.
I do. I need you to always remember that.
But ladies. As much as we have these universal, nuanced things, we do come from different homes.
Yeah.
With different value systems. So define that, and that's the thing with your partner, it's defining what's your understanding of, a space. Because where I come from, I don't just, if I have to come and visit you, I'm also not going to be in your bedroom opening up your cupboards, but it depends where you come from, because that's somebody else's normal, as opposed to your normal. So the judgment thing, Nedelka and Khalil, comes from that, because I remember I had a PA once in my life, and like incredible young woman, I was grooming her, and I remember she didn't rock up to work the one Monday morning. Tried to call her, couldn't get hold of her, tried a few people. Tuesday, still didn't hear from this girl. Wednesday, she comes into the office and I'm like, what happened? And she says, no, I was at a party during the weekend and, ended up in this car. So, because actually a guy phoned me and said, listen, I've got this person's phone. And I'm like, who are you? Can I have your number so I can get in touch with you? So eventually she comes on Wednesday, and I remember I said to her, listen, we need to go have lunch. Like before we get into any work, like let's talk about work, but I need to see you. So let's get out of the office. So she relayed the story to me that she was at a party, she got too drunk, ended up in the car, doesn't know how she ended up there, and she doesn't know what happened after that. And I said to her, so I just gave her a lecture, and I said, I'm going to wear a different hat now. So I'm not going to come here as your leader, as your boss. but what is happening? She came back to me on the Friday and she said, I spoke to my mom about our discussion, and my mom took responsibility that it's actually her fault. That she raised me without any form of code of conduct for our home. So people come from different homes.
Yeah.
I mean,
and she was like, I was like, well, this is going to impact you and your professional life and everything that you do. So perhaps that's a conversation you need to have with your mom, because now it means I need to be coaching you too. I love you enough as a sister to still take you through that, but we come from different places.
Yeah.
I think for me, kind of growing up at the intersection that I grew up in, I've kind of expressed to Nedelka, you know how South Africa went through this whole apartheid phase, and then 1994 was new freedom, newfound whatever. And with that came a generation of me's who were kind of born into this new sense of freedom, this new sense of community as well, because a lot of our parents are first generation middle class. So we're first generation middle class kids, and we're the first generation to grow up with white kids and go to schools with them and be in spaces and have a friend like my friend I don't know, Jason or Jessica, whatever's inviting me up. I remember when I first started at school, my mom was just very shocked at the way that I was operating, and even the code switching, because you're now in this new space, you're a little kid, you're like, oh my gosh, all these new people, this new sort of culture, etc. And with that came a lot of these culture shocks. When I'd go to my white friends' houses, for example, they'd just be like, oh, Naledi, you can just grab whatever you want from the fridge, or no, let's go to my mom's bedroom and watch TV, or things like that. And I'd just be like, whoa, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. But those are the little things that you kind of start getting used to, and you start seeing them being integrated into our lives as well.
Yeah,
one of the things I was thinking about, which was when I really realized that some of the challenges I might face because of how I was raised and how we're raised in our culture, was when I first came to Boston. A lovely family, Jewish family, hosting me in Boston, really great people, and they invited me to their Passover. I think it was Passover or Hanukkah, I can't remember which one of the two it was. But they had this tradition, there's this tradition where the head of the family hides some sort of important ornament, and the kids go around the house looking for it. And then when they find it, they come back to that person and they negotiate to give it back to the person. So they'll be like, I'll give it to you if you give me 30 Rand. And the person will be like, okay, what about 25? And I'll be like, oh, now that you said 25, how about 50 Rand? So it's just a back and forth of negotiation. And in that experience, it really, really made me think, because I was like, in my culture, there is no way you're negotiating with an adult for anything. First of all, there is no, and for them, that is something you're taught from a young age, because it's kids that say that, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. And it made me think, even when we go out into the real world as Black women and as Black people in general, we're very scared to negotiate and cross boundaries of authority. And that's very much ingrained in our culture. Now for me, especially the more that I'm working and the more I'm getting into spaces where I do have to negotiate, my prices, or negotiate my position and negotiate all of that, I have to be very conscious of the fact that now I'm stepping into this space as this being, and it's not a culture thing anymore. This person might be 30 years older than me, but right now we're supposed to be looking at each other as sort of equals in a business space. But that was something, and that is still something that's very hard to get over because of how I was raised. As soon as I see someone older that I'm in a workspace with, I'm like, I don't know how to ask you. I'm sorry. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I need you to pay me, please. At least, even if it's $2, please, just anything will make me and that's kind of unhealthy, especially existing in the space that we exist in now. So the challenge for me is how do we unlearn these, and how do we raise kids to be able to still step into these spaces and take up space, as you were saying earlier, while still being respectful and still, understanding that they're coming from a different position.
Yeah, that's a real thing that affected, because I'm overcome, that affected me as a musician, was being able to negotiate money. or even one of the things that I'm dealing with now is feeling like I've been underpaid and I didn't negotiate for myself in certain opportunities. So at this point in my life, I feel like I should be making more money, but because talking about money wasn't comfortable for me, if you said, you know, I'm going to give you $1 for this service, I was like, okay, you know, I don't want to make a big deal about it. And so there is some nuancing and some healing from that we need to. But you know what, even as I'm talking about this, for a lot of it, just in the context of what we're experiencing socially, I feel like some of this is PTSD from the journey across the Atlantic, you know, the journey that we didn't ask for, you know. So again, this is one of those conversations where it might be part 3, where we talk about the deeper effects of the transatlantic slave tragedy upon us and colonization on us descendants of Black folk. But you know what?
Yeah, that's another topic.
Yeah, I feel like this leads into, Naledi, the next question.
Yes, about the generational traumas.
Yeah, the challenges.
Yeah, so it led in perfectly, and just like I was wondering, what are some of the generational traumas that you feel like have influenced us having some of these challenges or finding ourselves in these spaces with these difficulties? Nedelka mentioned one, which I think is applicable across the whole diaspora, of, you know, the authority versus the worker versus the authority. That's something that we experienced in South Africa even until 1994, where if you see somebody as an authority figure, you have to respect them as that. And a lot of the time it was, you know, it was white people or non-Black people. And that very much influenced the way that you interact in those spaces. Those power dynamics as well would play back into the home. Something that I like to talk about a lot is, like, you know, how you'd have Black men out in the cities working for these people, being treated like boys, being treated like dogs, and then have them come back into our communities and have to find some sort of way to exert that respect and that power. And that's, I wouldn't say that is why, but it's also why you would see in a lot of Black communities a lot of like abuse and a lot of really power dynamics, because it's just like you're trying to find some sort of balance between two spaces, but it's just really difficult when a grown man like my grandfather would be kicked and spat on and treated like
and that's exactly, Naledi, you just took the words out of my mouth. From a South African context, so we had apartheid, as you know, which is racism, right? So, and I was going to take it to relationships, because a lot of we've had a lot of gender-based violence in these past 21 days, in these past 2 weeks. We've had 21 women being brutally killed due to, and like, I'm talking about hacking, cutting people up, chopping people, stabbing pregnant women, just heinous stuff, right? And everybody's enraged. So everyone in the country, from women to men, the conversation is hashtag men are trash. We refer to each other as the other gender. That's huge on social media now. People are not acknowledging you as a woman, or the girls, they're like, oh, we need to deal with the gender, this gender. And then women are also saying this gender. So it's really come to the systemic issues that we've had to deal with, right? From just the apartheid itself, is that our men are also quite emasculated, because they go out into the workplace and they're not seen, they're not acknowledged as men. And then what they come do is transfer all of that onto the women and their family systems. So we get the brunt of it at the end of the day. And those are the things that are affecting us so much, and like our current like construct and culture, is that the men are not emasculated. So then it becomes the suppression to the woman. Then the woman is also like, okay, fine, but now I need to be carrying and understanding that these men are having these problems. So there's how do we just bridge that chasm of saying, we understand your pain, but we can't carry, like, being a Black woman is like a double whammy. It's hard because you're already oppressed racially, and then you're also oppressed from a gender perspective. So it's double trauma. And our president this week was like, we have 2 pandemics. We have coronavirus and we have gender-based violence.
Yeah.
I think, you know, in the comments, we had a similar statement about how we end up with the raise your daughters and love your sons. because that same dynamic of we've seen how the world has treated you, and we want to hold you tight and provide you a place of safety, but then we overcompensate for it, and we miss the raising them part. And another way I would say this, just pivoting a little bit, how that generational trauma of authoritarianism and a hierarchy comes into play for us is exactly what you said, Nedelka, when it comes to knowing your worth. And I remember the first time I got offered $5,000 to do a lecture at a university. And in hindsight, if that was the opening offer, I'm guessing people were getting more than that.
Right.
The idea that you would pay to hear me speak as if I had gone through law school and a doctorate and had
and paid for it.
That I would not say to myself, yeah, and actually I think you pay somebody else 10. I'll take 7,500 if you like. But you know, and having had jobs previously where people were too quick to say yes to my requests, and recognizing, oh, other people ask for 10, 20 above what I just asked, and I'm thinking I'm doing something.
Right.
But another way it shows up, I'm a survivor of childhood sexual assault, and it shows up in the don't tell if someone is harming you, even if your cousin, your uncle, brother, whomever it is, don't tell. And when somebody does tell, you move them off, because we don't put our business in the streets. So we're not going to call the police.
And we don't get therapy.
Well, before the therapy, this person is not only doing it to your child. So I'm not calling the police, and your child is the one child in the family who said this happened to them. And it does go to the same thing with therapy. We don't put our business in the street, so I'm not going to a therapist.
Yeah.
So both of those things I see coming up with this, respect authority figure that, I can't tell on this person because that's my uncle. Or that's my whomever. I can't tell on them because they're an authority in our family. And I've seen other authorities in our family protect people like them. So I know I'm not supposed to say anything. I'm supposed to take it. And that's true for our boys and girls. And then as you get older and you need therapy and you say to a parent, and I have to say, because it's my story, when my mother heard about this, one of the first things she said to me, and I know it was out of pain, was, why are you bringing this up? Now, I didn't tell her. My brother told her. Why are you bringing this up after almost 40 years? And I'm like, first of all, I didn't bring it up. I would have gone to my grave because I didn't want you to feel hurt by it.
Yeah.
But how can that be your first response to your child? And I know it was pain, but if that's your response now to me as an adult and mother of 3 grandchildren, why would I think it's safe for them to be with you?
Yeah.
If you think that, and I know in many ways she wasn't saying you should have just kept it to yourself and keep it moving, but that is what she communicated to me. And that's her own generational trauma.
That's exactly transferred trauma.
Yeah.
It's definitely transferred trauma. Because, like, I remember when I was on the journey of finding my father, I spoke to my aunt, and my aunt said to me, "Why are you opening up Pandora's box?" I said, "It's not about anyone but me."
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not about you and your process and the family process. This is my journey.
Yeah.
And this is something I need to go through. So we're made to feel, and it takes us back to the shame and guilt thing. So we perpetuate the cycle and it's generational trauma. Because we don't talk about these things in this family. Everything, and there's so much covert hostility and trauma that sits in our bodies, and it manifests in other ways in our adults.
See, this is now conversation number 4. This is now the 4th part of this in terms of how the traumas manifest. I do want to, because we can stay in here, this is meaty, you know, I do want to honor that we said this is also including storytelling. So I want to invite Naledi in. I do want to say to you, Khalilah, one of the things with the whole loving your son, raising your daughters, I think one thing that I learned was, I remember my mother always saying, get your education. No one can take anything from you. And that speaks to not wanting to have to be dependent upon anyone because it doesn't feel safe to be able to do that. And so we're taught to, you know, get all these alphabets behind our names, you know, stack a couple of somethings in a couple of different financial situations, have your own. And so these are part of the things that we're passing on and not necessarily teaching, some of us at least, not teaching our daughters to be able to learn how to partner in certain ways.
Credentials so you can run if you need to.
So if you can run if you need to. And I don't actually want to take all the, because it's both sides, because I think also if we are becoming educated, I just want to say this, a friend of mine said to me, you better stop that. You better stop going off to school, or else you're going to end up single. And so I want to put the onus on the men too, like, okay, I'm smart. You know, thank God. To me, that means that the two of us together could, you know, do a little something and change and live an amazing life, you know. So, okay, Naledi, please.
Yeah. Cool. So kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to share about was a bit difficult for me, because when I hear storytelling, I get taken back to my childhood. And I hadn't thought about these memories for actually a really long time, but my parents used to just tell me folklore stories that would teach different lessons that were relevant to me at that time. And one of my favorite stories was a story of Maria Petsane, who was a young girl who wouldn't listen. So I thought I'd just share that, and then I'll kind of share a bit of my thoughts behind that, because especially looking at where I am now and being in the wild where I don't have my mom here to, you know, tell me you better go to sleep or the demon's gonna come after you or this is gonna happen. This is something that has definitely been ringing in my head. So Maria Petsani was a young girl who wouldn't listen. Her mom called one morning, Helang Maria Petsani, take the basket, Sesroto, to get some roots for us to stew. She then went to the field to get some roots. She digs and then finally finds some roots. She wipes them clean and puts them in the sroto, the basket. As she's digging, she sees this big, ugly monster, Lidimu, a cannibal. They see each other. She looks at him, he looks at her, she looks at him again, and she ignores him. Lidimu says to her, Maria Petsani, what are you digging? She ignores him again. He asks again, Helang Maria Petsani, what are you digging? She responds rudely, can you not see? I'm digging the roots of the Lidimu. It's clear that she's not scared of him. And so like an angered bull, he charges towards her. He wants to catch her and eat her as he's a cannibal. But she is small and fast, so she runs away like a field mouse. She finds a little hole and crawls inside it. He can't get her. With a small screeching voice, she teases and taunts him. Ah, you look like a creepy crawly, Lidimu. You are so ugly and big. He's very angry, but because he cannot do anything, he gulps loudly and says to her, I will find a way to catch you. You can't run away forever. And then stomps away loudly. Maria Petsani then runs home quietly. When she finally reaches her high, which is her home, she screams out, Meh, meh, here are your roots. Her mom asks her in an interrogating manner, where were you, my child? Why did it take you so long? Maria Petsani responds, Ma, you will not believe how far I had to go, all the way out to the fields of the Lidimu. Her mom responds angrily, Yo, Nana, I told you not to go there. Did the pigs bite off your ears? Why don't you listen? She then responds, I'm not afraid of him. Her mom says, how can you not be afraid? He's bigger than any chief, stronger than any bull, and more dangerous than a big water snake. Ma, but look at me. I may be small and weak, but I am like a jackal, fast and clever. I hide in a hole in the ground where he cannot get me, then I tease him so he gets furious and leaves, she retorts. Her mother warns her again, but Maria Petsani doesn't take heed. The next morning, while her mother's fetching water, Maria Petsani takes the sroto and sneaks back out into the fields of the Lidimu. She gets there and starts digging again. Hela, what are you doing? I thought I told you to stay away from here. Can you not see I'm digging for the roots in the field of the Lidimu? She giggles. He charges again for her, his mouth salivating for meat. And so she runs into the hole and teases him again. Nwe, 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 you ugly thing. You will never catch me. What Maria Petsani didn't know is that Lidimu was actually much smarter than she thought. So he pretends to walk away, but sits still outside the hole. He waits, like a cat waiting for a mouse to come out of a hole, or a mother waiting for her child to bring her food. Maria Petsani, however, doesn't fall for it. She also sits and waits quietly. Lidimu then thinks of another plan. He tries to coo her. Maria Petsani, you need to come out. Your mom is calling you over there by the big rock. She's looking for you. The sun is going down. She teases him again. Nwe, nwe, nwe. He's angry and strikes the ground. She sits put in the hole. Lidimu then has another idea. He begins in a high-pitched voice. Maria Petsani, Helang, it's me, your mother. Come out of the hole now. We must go home. She laughs. Do you think I'm a fool? My mother's voice is much more beautiful than that. You're as ugly as a baboon with teeth like a boar and stomach like a beer pot. She laughs again. He thinks, okay, I know what I can do. I will make my voice softer. So he goes, Nana, come out. We must go home. It's your mom. The sun is setting fast. She laughs even louder. You, my mother? My mom's voice is much smoother, like water running down the stream. He sits for longer trying to figure out a plan, but he cannot think of one. So she shouts out to him, Go home, Lidimu. You can never make me come out. My mother's voice is soft like grains of sand, which can never even hurt a fly. Lidimu finally leaves when the sun sets, and Maria Petsani slips out of the hole and runs all the way to her home. In the middle of the night, Lidimu then runs over to the fields where the hole Maria Petsani hides in is and uses his big hands to fill it with stones. He leaves just enough room at the top for Maria Petsani's head. He smiles to himself and then goes home. The next morning, the disobedient child goes back to the field of the Lidimu to dig for roots. Little does she know that he's left his home early to catch her. So he shouts, Helang, Maria Petsani, what are you digging? She responds as she always does. Can you not see? I am digging the roots of the Lidimu. He charges towards her again, and Maria Petsani runs swiftly to the hole that she hides in. She tries to slip in like a little mouse, but only her head can fit. Lidimu then laughs with his big and heavy voice and smacks his lips. He then grabs the child that would not listen to her mother's warning and puts her in a bag. She cries, please, I promise I'll never do this again. Never, never, ever again. Not until my feet bend down under me. Not until the ancient oak's trees' roots fall up under it. Please, save me. You're nowhere. The Lidimu doesn't even hear her cry. He only hears her teasing, Nwe, nwe, nwe. He throws the bag over his shoulder and goes home to where he will eat her. This is the story of the young girl who would not listen to her mom. So this story used to scare me when I was a child.
It's scary.
My mom would wait and watch me sit up, watch me watch TV until 10 o'clock, watch me act a fool. And then she knows that she would be like, let's talk a little bit. Let's talk about this character I just thought up in my mind called Lidimu. And she would be like, Lidimu's coming to get you. I promise you, if you don't go to sleep within the next 20 minutes, this monster, because you don't listen, just like Maria Petsani, is coming to get you and he's going to take you and eat you. That it just used to freak me out. I couldn't sleep. Like, I don't even know. But thinking of the story now, I was just speaking to my mom about it earlier and just like, rehashing some of those memories. And I think this story obviously was told to kids to teach them to listen, to respect, to not be disobedient. But looking at it now, it's not just a folklore, it's not just a kid's story anymore. It's kind of a reality that exists even at this age that I'm at now. The perpetrator, the Lidimu, are people out there on these streets, you know. And I know Sis Thuli brought up earlier the whole concept of, like, you know, not concept, it's a thing, the gender-based violence that is going on and stuff. And Lidimu was always, you know, whenever my mom or my grandparents would tell me the story, it's this man with a deep voice that's just big and scary and is going to come and get you if you don't listen. And that's kind of how I see all these perpetrators now in the world. And I'm just like, these people, I don't know how these people are Lidimos. And it's so scary to think about how this, you know, this kids folklore has really got me also to just always be like very aware of everything that is going on in this world and be careful and listen to my mom's voice, because if I don't listen and if I stay out and if I'm teasing all these people and teasing these places, then this monster is going to come and get me. These perpetrators are coming to get me.
That's El Cuco in Spanish language. El Cuco will come to get you.
Yeah.
Or you mean like Duppy?
Like Duppy will come to get you. You need to listen to Duppy.
I'm noting that one for when I need it. When I need to pull it out.
Yeah.
It's funny because one of the things that we were hey, David, I see you. I know you know what I'm talking about. One of the things that we were talking about is to talk about the word spirit in our various cultures. And so one of the things that, you know, like Naledi is saying, to keep the children in line, you told these stories to help to create the boundaries. And so one of them was definitely Duppy, and then my grandmother would talk about rolling calf, which still crawls my skin to the way that, like, what's the one, the Mary, my son still won't let me say it. It's like one of those things that you call on the child and just like, who?
Mary times 2.
No, I don't. It's bloody. It's
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary.
Oh, Bloody Mary?
Yeah.
Yep.
No, like my son is like, yeah, it's the name we don't mention. And so, you know,
Also,
like,
Candyman.
those kinds of things, you know, so it's like, you know, Duppy is a thing that you don't go over there because it might be Duppy over there, or if you go down the road, watch behind yourself because it may be a rolling calf, you know, these kinds of things that we speak to our children.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about it though. Like I hear you redeeming the story, Naledi, but I don't know about telling these crazy behind stories to our children.
You know, something else I was thinking about.
Sorry, go Naledi.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, you know, that whole I don't know energy is also something I was thinking about, because the way that the story is told, especially this one, because this is a Sotho folklore and I am a Sesotho girl, so it's something that's much told in our community. But it kind of places like the girl in this position of like, you know, if you go around teasing these boys, if you go around acting certain types of ways and going into certain types of places, then they're going to get you. These perpetrators are going to get you. And again, I think it goes back to when I was just hearing Khalilah talk earlier about the whole concept of like, you know, raising your girls and loving your sons. It's kind of like these types of stories were very much made to make us like scared and make us conservative and make us be the ones that have to be aware and do all of these things without ever really turning an eye on the other side. Yeah, because I haven't really heard stories such as these that were like, you know, were gendered, so gendered. And especially to the other side, like there's other scary monsters that are just like general for everyone, but they were never like, you know, boys, if you act like this, then this is going to happen.
That's a good point. I can't think of any.
Yeah.
So I have an interesting story I worked in the States years ago at a summer camp, upstate New York. So next to a little town called Binghamton by Hancock. And I remember I was a camp counselor, so came all the way from Africa to this big America. I had excited to be in America. And I remember those kids are a lot. Those children that go there, and I mean, most of them are Caucasian children, right? I was like, how am I going to make it here? I still have to work in the camp, come back and still counsel these kids that I'm living in a bunk with. And they were just hideous. I remember the one night, I was like, you all need to go to bed. Because they'd ask me ridiculous questions. You're from Africa. Did you buy clothes at the airport, Thuli? I was like, so I took out all my posters of the Zulu maidens and I put them up. I just like, guys, it was drama in my dorm, right? And the one evening, they were just making such a racket. And I got up and I started ululating. I said, the African gods are coming to you tonight.
I'm about to pull that at any season.
Yo, I got your back, Naledi.
Sailor's office.
I got your back.
It works, Naledi, with the children in America. I was like, with these little special kids. And I promise you, I'd just be like, you guys want me to call the African gods to join us tonight?
Just all of them, all the gods.
All be like, they'd zip it. So yeah, there's a time and place to be able to get into where we come from.
Thuli, you know what? I'm watching the time because I want to honor the fact that we wanted to keep it at 2 hours. Naledi, can we go to Thuli and then go to self-care?
Yeah.
Thuli, can you tell your story, please?
Okay, ladies. My story is a different kind of a story. So I'm a bit nervous because I'm very passionate about the hard of hearing community. And I belong to a group called Gifted Hands, which is a group from my church. And we used mime interpretation and sign language to communicate a message. So I hope you'll be able to hear me as I prepare this little message for you. Let me know if you can hear the song. It is an English song. Okay, you ready? So forgive me if I make any errors.
Hi, pretty boy.
Can you hear? Sorry.
Can you turn it up?
If I turn it up. Okay. Let me put it closer, the speaker.
Okay.
Just let me know if you can hear it.
Okay. Yes.
Even when life has got me down and my hopes and dreams and nowhere to be found, still I stay, 'cause I know I'm too close to give up now. I put it all in your hands and just stay. You embrace in the moment when you can feel your soul. When your dark days won't seem to go away. Help me say you can. I just right by your side and we make everything alright. So if you can, your hands and just if I cry, it's alright. 'Cause it ain't just what I need. 'Cause everybody hurts sometimes, and every heartbeat bleeds. Where to go? To the one who understands. So no matter what tomorrow may bring, still I stand. Even when I see moments when you can feel your soul, when your darkness won't seem to go away, help me say you can. Right by your side, make everything alright. So if you can, your hands and just stand. Whoa, 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 whoa. Even if you fall, still know that you just, yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. If you can put your hands in the way, if you can don't be sad, you can. Right by your side, make everything alright. So if you can, there's a plan. You if you can, there's a plan.
Hey. Woo!
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. There's something so powerful in being able to interpret a message through a different medium.
Yeah.
I'm a communicator at the core of who I am, and I think it's important that any message should be able to land, you know,
Yeah.
to everyone.
Yeah.
And for me, particularly for people who cannot hear like we hear.
Yeah.
And when I got into this ministry, it was like, we must just remember that we can overcome everything, you know, and standing, because I'm such a warrior, and this is really, the warrior mindset is really what we need to start entrenching, and being a warrior. And I love the samurais too, because they're peaceful warriors. And they're warriors. I know we're going to talk about boundaries, but they understand their time, their vocation, their space, and who they are. And ladies, for me, I really wanted to reinforce that we need to fight for our peace, peace of mind, you know, fight for, and that's it, our peace and everything, whether it's in the boardroom. I mean, COVID-19, there are things we're not trying to be battling with. I choose my battles. I'm like, I don't have the capacity to hold what you're giving me right now. And I think it talks to self-care, which we're going to be talking about later on, is that through it all, you know, and whatever spiritual power you tap into, is that looking at the woman holistically, tap into that, because there are things in this life that are just bigger than us.
Yeah.
That are not induced by, you know, trauma will have that whole language, but it's saying, you know, I have a certain coding in me and a certain DNA coding.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping one day when you come to South Africa, we have a very interesting place called Origins and other centers where you'll be able to come and do your DNA test and find out where you're from an ancestral point of view. So I think it's so important that we're all reconnecting with ourselves right now. Our spirits, our minds, our hearts.
Our
And
ancestry.
just looking at the blind spots, and just knowing who am I?
Yeah.
And this ecosystem in the 21st century, in 2020, in this new decade.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where there's a shift in energy, there's a shift everywhere in the world, and the world is never going to be the same again.
Yeah.
Hallelujah.
I really love that, Thuli, just, you know, finding means to be able to communicate with everyone. I was sharing with Nedelka that, you know, I was raised, I speak multiple languages, And I was raised being taught that, you need to be able to relate to a person from where they're coming from, not to make yourself like, especially in South Africa, people be like, hey, Mutweng, listen to her with the English, nya, 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 ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
And especially because I went to like, Model C school, and we had, there's that sort of Model C English that you're speaking. My mom was very, very intentional about making sure that you're listening to other people, you're learning how to speak those languages, you're learning not just how to speak the language, but also how to interact in like different cultures and stuff. And a group that we forget about a lot are like people who can't see and people who can't hear,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
people who can't move in the ways that are typically expected to move. So I really think it's really amazing that you kind of came into the space and, met everyone where they are and brought everyone into the space. I really, really appreciated that. And I really appreciate people who do that work and are conscious of bringing that work into every space that they're in. It's so important. It's so, so important.
So I think we should, something that you said, Thuli, is about, it's an interesting way of looking at how we can be warriors, right? And so one of them is fighting for our right to have peace, and being committed to that, and that not being a negotiable. And so, Naledi, I think we can take it in right now into self-care.
Yeah.
Launch us, please.
Yeah. So obviously, like, the space was one way that we were trying to like practice self-care and begin the process of like healing and understanding, or continue that process, let me rather say. And I think before we get deep into a conversation of self-care, I would be curious to hear from everyone what self-care means to you. What is the meaning of self-care as you know it? For me, self-care means being in a space where you are putting yourself first, and not in a negative way where like you're being selfish or whatever, but kind of putting your needs first, making sure that your different parts of your being, your spirit, your body, your mental health are all in balance, so that whatever you do outside of your own space is done to the best of that ability. So whether that means like, taking a bath will make me feel happier, or will make my body feel more in check, or going to church or praying might be self-care, or, just having this conversation is a form of self-care. Yeah, I'm curious to know from everyone else's perspectives what that definition.
Can I also ask that while we're sharing, the four of us are sharing, can I ask that those who are participating either via the webinar or on Facebook, I will say if you're using the webinar, definitely go to all panelists and attendees, and please share your self-care rituals, practices, beliefs, and everyone that's on Facebook Live, just flood up that comment section, because we need to do this. Like, we need to see the myriad options for how we need to take care of ourselves. So I guess I'll speak about mine, and then I'll pass it on to our guests. For me, self-care means putting in my rituals. I had daily rituals that at the thickest part of my life, and I'm now realizing that being thick or slim does not take away from my beauty. But at that time, I felt that that mattered in terms of how I looked and how I felt about myself. And it was a good thing, it was a healthy season. But to get to that path, I had to have my daily rituals in there, which included getting up and reading my devotionals. It also included me doing my stretching and toning. It also meant that I would do some physical activity in the day, and these were non-negotiable. I got up at 5:30 every morning, and I took that 30 minutes to do that every morning. And it was a practice that kept me going for at least 15 years until I moved to Boston. And when I started getting tired, because again, I was by myself, one of the things I took out was my daily rituals, and immediately started spiraling back into certain habits that helped me to get back thick again. But I love myself this time, and the journey to health is one for health and not just physical image. And so for me, rituals, in terms of, for me, self-care means having that set time that is not negotiable. It's untouched. This is my time, and I do these activities. I'm going to keep it the way I've been saying it. Khalilah, into Thuli, please.
So I know there's a point in your life where you begin to learn about how to say no. That we've talked a lot about the expectation that we will lead, that we will rescue, that we will give without having the vulnerability of someone to give to us. But I've moved a little bit past that point to the affirmative of learning to say yes to myself. So as opposed to no to others, I am a giving person, and I do like to problem solve, and I do like to help people realize their best selves. I have lots of mentees, and when my mentees ask me things that other people pay me to do, the answer is always yes. And I think I had a lot of tension with that. Like, you need to learn to tell people no. You need to learn to say no. You need to learn to say no. And really what I needed to embrace was saying yes to myself. So I've been doing a lot more of that. No guilt with saying, yes, I'm not going to go to work today. I don't feel well. Yes, you can stay home. It is okay. No one's going to hate you. No one is going to feel like you aren't on your game or that you don't work hard enough, because you do contribute and you do things for people. Yes, you don't have to show up at the 34th recital of your child if it is not critical and no other parents are going to be there, because I had this story in my head that they must see me when they look out in the audience, and they look for me whenever they have something. But it was like, listen, most of the other kids' parents won't be here. This thing is happening in the middle of the day. Say yes to yourself that it makes more sense for you not to rip and run up and down the road, and to ask them about it later, so you know that they know that it was important. And something that you just said, Nedelka, that I tried to do is I used to set my alarm for what time I needed to get ready to get to work. Now I set my alarm for 30 to 45 minutes before that, because I realize, and I came to this realization not on my own, but with my therapist, I need time to get situated in the morning. And my brain definitely functions better on good rest, and I wake up and I'm rested and all good, but I need that time without people.
Yep.
Asking me for anything, talking to me. My friends joke that they know, don't call me before 10 a.m. and don't call me after 10 p.m. It's a 10 and 10 rule, because just because I'm awake doesn't mean that I have to give you myself before I have a chance to figure out where I'm going. And so I'm not great at meditation. I'm not great at journaling. You know, I could just sit in my house. I'm also an introvert, which surprises people because they think introvert is shy, as opposed to I get my energy internally and not externally from other people. So I need that time in the morning to wake up, and I would have a terrible day if I jumped out of bed, got dressed, and got ready to go.
Yeah.
My days are so much more, I can assess the meaning of the day if I start the day with myself. So myself.
Yeah. Khalilah, I had the exact same thing. And I love how you gave the affirmative of yes more than no.
Right.
Because where I am now, I'm also giving myself permission to prioritize myself in the scale of things. And I think, like, a critical question I've been asking myself, I think since last year, I had a very difficult year last year. And everything I'm doing, I'm like, what's the why? Why?
Yeah.
So I'm conscious about everything. I'm like, why am I having this discussion with the ladies tonight? Why am I home right now? You know, and it's just listening to my body, because the world just takes so much from us and we allow it. So I'm not a victim to having said yes, everyone.
Yeah.
But it's really just consciously going into my why for everything that has to do with me.
Yeah.
I see one of my mentees in the chat.
Can I just say, I'm not seeing the chat flood up with our self-care practices. Come on, y'all, share away and put it in that Facebook Live. That's what this is about. This is what this space is about. Like, we're here to love on each other, hold space for each other, help each other get into a place of healing. And a lot of it is just expressing it. One of the first levels of manifestation is to get it out of your mind, or get it in your mind and then express it out, either through word or writing it down. So let's do this. I want to watch the time out, and I want to also honor the fact that we were all supposed to do something. So I'm going to present mine. Still flood up. the chats with your self-care practices, I'm going to share something that I wrote 4 days before my father was, it was confirmed that my father had cancer. And so he since then passed away. And this is little something that I wrote, and I'm going to share it now. And so here we are. Okay. So here we are. Women can't do what men do, is what he told me. He was talking about sex, our sexuality, our sexual freedom. And of course, he was only talking about heterosexual sex. I was always curious about that warning, though. In his heterosexual world, if men could do whatever they wanted, who were they doing it with? Men had the right, the R-I-G-H-T right, and the right, the R-I-T-E right, to sow their royal oats before they had to become mature men and make a woman honorable by marrying her. And women had to play their cards right to be chosen, you know, be coy, don't be loud, don't talk too much, don't laugh too hard, never have the last say. If you're really smart, then don't let them know. Let them win and let them think they thought up that solution to that problem. And oh yeah, be sexy, mysterious, don't be available, know how to cook your plump behind off, have a really small waist, long hair, be a virgin, and just ignore the cheating thing. Do all of those things and you'll be the wife. You'll get the ring, the house, and the legitimate children, the #1 concubine in the harem. He meant well. He was just trying to prepare me. These were some of the first lessons I learned about being a woman. And then there she was, the woman that woke up at 4 o'clock every weekday morning for almost 40 years to wait tables at the hotel. On her waitress paycheck, she took care of her mother, her sister, and her brother in another country. I watched her come home in the evenings after waiting tables to start dinner because her daughter would get in later in the evening after her long day's work as the bookkeeper in a modern-day sweatshop in the garment district. I watched her as she cooked dinner in a corset, slip, the heels that she didn't take off yet and that she'd waited tables in, sipping on a cold beer straight out of the can. A devout Christian woman who would cut you and cuss you out as swiftly and as easily as a hot knife slices through butter. And then she would drop a mean rumba down on you just because she remembered a moment in time from her younger days. In her home country, she had her first child at age 17. She had her second child at the age of 22. By that time, she was married, but it didn't last. She told me that she was accustomed to dressing up in the finest and latest fashions. Because she could sew each day after work, she would purchase a few yards of material and make a whole new dress for the next day. I have the pictures. She was what we would call a hottie. Hair in flawless bouffant, heels purchased from the Sears and Roebuck catalog, and her self-made dresses that were true to the day, well contoured, squared shoulders, small waist, hemline just below the knee, neatly creating the shape of a perfect A-line skirt. One day, her husband told her that they were married now and she didn't need to dress up anymore. She was a married woman, a wife. He had made her honorable, and so now she needed to play the role of a good wife. When she told him that he met her like that, fancy and such, he slapped her. As she reached for the standing wooden ashtray to hit him over the head, his mother, her mother-in-law, walked in and stopped her. She told me she aimed to kill him that day. She walked out of the house she purchased with him, the house with all the new appliances, all of her dresses and accessories, and never went back. And this was another lesson I learned about being a woman. So I didn't want us.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. I didn't want to end us off on, you know, these kind of thoughts, but maybe this opens up to another conversation and helps us to understand about the things that we've been told about who we are as women and, you know, just how we deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to have been in this space with you all.
So happy that we did this together.
It was amazing. It feels good.
It feels what?
It feels like it was short. But it was 2 hours.
It's 2 hours.
I mean, whenever you're around a table with people who you're enjoying conversation with, you can sit. I mean, I've sat started conversations at this time and sat until 3 a.m. in the morning, being like,
Wow,
where did the
Naledi.
time go?
And thank you to all of you in South Africa who are
Hey.
10 p.m. at night.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank
Right,
you.
right. Wait. We got to give it up.
I wish I could, but it's in my heart.
Thank you, Khalilah. Thank you, Nedelka. Thank you, Naledi.
Nedelka and I are gonna plan a trip. We know that actually South Africa has told us we are not invited from America until we get our coronavirus in check.
I'm not mad at them.
I'm not mad. I'm not mad.
Guys,
Why you don't have cases
bringing
and we
the
do.
coronavirus here.
Yeah, I was told. I'm like, you cannot come to South Africa from the U.S. right now.
No, you can't. No, they've banned. They have certain countries.
So we
that are
will
not
we
even
will
gonna
plan
make it.
a time for when we're not banned.
Absolutely, and that time is coming.
It's coming.
Hey.
Yay! Thank
Yeah,
you, Naledi.
Yeah, thank you everyone. I really loved all the stories that you all shared. Really showed me a lot. Well, not a lot, but showed me a little bit into your lives and into your journeys. I would still love to hear from everyone in the attendee audience and on Facebook. What are some self-care practices that you practice? I know we haven't had time to go deep into the conversation, but I think we unpacked so much, and that is just the beginning of these conversations and of this journey. I'm so grateful. Again, like I was saying at the beginning, I'm always so grateful to sit in rooms with like older women and just be at the table and be able to contribute meaningfully from where I am, but also just to really hear about your journeys and how they've shaped the person that you are today, and really like learn from that as I go forward.
I'm younger than you. I don't know what you mean.
Second youngest in this group.
Who told you that? Because
you
know we don't give out our age like that. Come on.
But I would also like to bring a group of girls into the room. I know I invited some of our alumni from the Dreaming Girls Conference last year, and I know they have come into the room. They've been sending me texts, and they've also been sending texts inside the chat. And thank you so much for joining us, ladies. You know that especially my philosophy is, if you're not taking care of yourself and your mind and not expanding it, then you can't make good music, you can't make good art, you can't listen to good music or good art from the place that you should. So it's really great that we have these opportunities to be in these spaces. Thank you as well to just everyone.
And I'm seeing the Facebook Live, the self-care is coming through. Naledi, I'm gonna ask that we continue, keep it open. I'm gonna play that song that we started with. Do you mind, Naledi?
Yeah, sure. Could we still end on the affirmations?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we're going to be ending within the next few minutes, and we just wanted to end in a space where we really feel like, we're holding each other, we're lightening each other's load. So we would like to put out a question to everyone on the panel, and as well as everyone in the group as well. What can you do for someone to help lighten their load, trusting that in you giving, you receive? So just share with us what is one thing in the next week, in the next few days, in the next month, in the next year, what is something that you're putting forward to do that you will be able to lighten someone else's
How
load?
can you help with the dishes in your own way?
Yeah. How are you helping with the dishes? I love that.
On that note, while you're flooding up again with how you can help with the dishes, and also taking a moment to talk about how you can help with your own dishes and practice self-care on yourself, I'm going to play this song by John 9, and I'm going to play it low. Are we going to speak ours out loud, Naledi?
Sure, we can.
I'm going to put on John 9 in the back. Go ahead.
I'm going to put as well in the chat, but we can also
Okay.
So maybe share mine before I jump into the chat because I have to run. Okay. What I'm going to do this week for someone is be an active listener, not offer any advice. Just give them the space to unload and know that they can be lighter.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say listening.
We're in tune.
Yeah.
Love that.
Listening.
I think for me, something I've been very intentional about is creating spaces for us to be able to share and to speak. So I hope that in doing this, we have lightened some of the load in our own little spaces, but also continuing to go around in our community and helping create spaces where we can share and listen.
Today's my mom's birthday. And so when we say adieu for now, I'm going to go love on her, see if I can help. She's over here cooking and doing stuff for Sunday dinner already. So I want to see if I can throw my hands in with her and help her with that. And then we'll do a little bit of a fiesta a little bit later. So I want to love on my mom. Mommy Khalilah said she loves you. She said, oh, which Khalilah? My Khalilah? My mom is right here. Yes.
Oh, happy birthday.
They said happy birthday. She said thank you.
The photo of you, lady.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm seeing in the chat, we've got I can listen and be present in the conversation from Karen Belgrave. And Gobisa, thank you so much. You have been contributing. Every time we say flood the chat, you're the first person. I love to see it. Accepting help from someone who seems intent on helping me. That's important. Accepting love as much as you're willing to give it.
Yeah, yeah.
Go
ahead. While we're doing this, I just want to say this. Hold your thought, Naledi. I'm going to put on John 9's song, and it's called "A Woman is the Greatest Threat to the Status Quo." No, I'm missing a word in there. A spiritual woman is the greatest threat to the status quo. And so if you listen to the lyrics, I'm going to let it play a little bit. I'm hoping that you will receive some of the energy that we need to be sure that we're standing apart. We need to, because we're important. We are important. We have solutions just naturally embedded within us. And just our vibration alone can shift atmospheres.
Yeah.